Have you ever had negative thoughts in your mind that you aren't good enough, that you'll never be successful? If so, you're not alone. I've had those thoughts playing in my mind ever since I took the leap to become an entrepreneur. It's a dirty, dark secret that no one likes to talk about, as the glamorization of becoming an entrepreneur is shown in the media. I realized that in order to succeed, I needed help. We all do. So I decided to go all in on myself, spending thousands of hours in the trenches, reading, joining groups, listening to podcasts, hiring coaches to develop a bulletproof morning routine for success. Join me on my journey as together we build our morning fire to ignite our lives as entrepreneurs. My name is Jeff Wickersham, and this is the Morning Fire for Entrepreneurs podcast.
Welcome to the Morning Fire for Entrepreneurs podcast. I'm excited to have special guest Chris Miles on the podcast today. Chris, welcome to the show.
Hey, man, such a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here as well. Let's get into state, right? Let's do 3 breaths in. So we're going to do 3 power breaths in, breathing through the belly, chest, all the way up through the head. We're going to raise our arms up to the ceiling. Let's go ahead and breathe in and out. Good. Another breath in and out. Final breath in and out. All right, now I'm going to go 3, 2, 1, and we're going to yell boom at the top of our lungs. All right, get some energy going. We're going to have a great conversation in 3, 2, 1, and boom.
Boom.
There you go. Appreciate Chris playing along. So I eat, sleep, and breathe, morning habits, rituals, routines. What is your go-to morning routine that sets you down that path towards success that you do daily?
Yeah, big focus for me is focus on mind, body, and spirit, right? I know Tony Robbins has his own little hour of power thing, and it's kind of my own version of it where first thing when I roll out of bed, I've got to work out. So,
Yep.
I try to do spiritual stuff, but then I fall asleep, right? So I got to at least get my body moving and flowing. I'm a marathoner, so I do run 3 days a week. The other 3 days I do, weight training and things like that. Take Sunday off. Maybe just do a little walk or something like that on Sunday mornings. And then I'll do things with my mind and spirit too. So, I'll do prayers of gratitude. Sometimes while I'm working out or after I'm done, meditation, big breath, type breath work type stuff, and anything from like studying, you could even like listen to your headphones and listen to good audiobooks, wherever it might be, or on your morning drive or whatever it might be. But, doing that kind of stuff, reading, scriptural type texts, like I said, prayers, whatever you might be doing, but really just getting your body in a state where you're winning from the first moment you get, you're up. It doesn't matter what the heck is going on with your life. And I've had some bad experiences in life where this was like my one win. I had to start the day out before I hit all the stress and the crap, so it's essential. You got to have it if you want more abundance and prosperity in your life.
I 100% agree with you. And I love the fact that you work out, right? Because people rely on that caffeinated cup of coffee. If you get the body moving, we are made to move.
Yeah.
You will produce so much natural energy, and it is such a game changer. And I love how you stated, hey, you are winning right when you wake up. And I feel like that is such a vital part of success and creating that path towards success is you're getting these quick wins right when you wake up, right? You're taking time to do something physical, get that energy, release those endorphins. You're going to feel good, and you're starting out from a much better place from a foundation perspective rather than all of a sudden hitting the snooze button. You're already losing. You're checking your phone. You're going down that social media rabbit hole. You're exercising. You've got some meditation. You're getting those quick wins. I think that's so vital. So I love, and I am 100% on board with everything you're doing there. So really love that. You said it really, your morning routine pulled you through, some financial hardships. Explain that kind of situation. Give some context to the audience.
Yeah. Before I jump in that, one thing I did realize I do before I get out the door is I drink at least 16 to 20 ounces of water. Like you mentioned coffee, right? Like when I learned like 16, 20 ounces of water that has the same effect, and not to mention gets your body in a much better place. I'm like, I got to do that. And that's huge. Like, especially if you go work out, you got to do that kind of stuff anyways.
Yeah. And we at night, that's the longest time we ever go without water, right? So we're a little dehydrated when we wake up. You get that water, again, to your point, it kickstarts that hydration process. It wakes you up, and it's another piece to the equation. So
For
love you
sure.
adding that. What about the hardships, and how did the routine kind of help you through those?
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the worst times I've had a few, highs and lows, right? And, I mean, one of the worst times I had was actually during the last recession, where I was financially free and independent by the age of 28, back in 2006, came out of retirement, started teaching the things like I'm doing today. And while we did that, we launched a new business. I cut off my streams of income, because the other partner's like, hey, I want you all in, all focus. So I cut off the multiple streams of income. Bad idea. So I went from millionaire to eventually upside down millionaire, where I was over $1 million in debt and about $16,000 in the hole each month, to the point where I felt overwhelmed. I felt stressed. I felt like, to some level, I was now out of integrity because I was teaching people how to get out of the rat race. And here I am back in it. Right. So I had to stop teaching that. But I'll tell you, like, I didn't know how to get out of that situation. I mean, it seemed like every time I thought I had a solution, the door would slam shut on me. Right. And so the only thing that kept me going when I got to the point where I was out of answers, and I was like, I'm about to lose everything. And, I avoided bankruptcy, but I was at the point where pretty much I was like a 2-year long dry spell. Right. Like, it was really just struggle. There's little glimmers of hope. And then, slam back in your face. The only thing that kept me going really was those morning routines, doing exactly what I mentioned. And there'd be a lot of times, like, I would finish a workout and doing I would have to do major breath work, right? I would have to do the thing where I inhale and, and breathe out and exhale, saying, be still and know that I am God, right? Like that kind of stuff, just to try to get myself in a more aligned place spiritually, mentally, and really get myself in a place where I realized that there were no accidents, right? That everything happens for a reason. Whatever this reason is, I didn't know, but I knew I would get on the other side. I just didn't know how. And I had to do that in the morning to get a win. Because, when you got collectors calling you multiple times a day, multiple collectors, right? It constantly reminds you how you're a failure, right? Yeah. So for me, to be able to say, you know what, in this moment, right? In this moment, I'm winning. In this moment, right now, I'm financially okay. Like, I'm not starving. I'm not dying. I'm okay in this moment. Now, maybe I can't pay that bill in the next couple hours. Maybe I'm even behind on a bill. But in this moment, I'm still okay. I'm alive. I'm breathing. I'm doing that kind of stuff. And I had to do those prayers of gratitude to really count my blessings, right? To stay in that better state. And I'll tell you, I mean, it didn't happen overnight. It wasn't like this magical, transformation where, my life changed and, it was all because of that morning routine. It was consistently doing that day in, day out, day after. It had to become a part of my life. It had to become a part of my being, not just a ritual, right? It had to be something that became a part of me. And eventually, I'll tell you, once things started to shift, man, it shifted and it just took off. And even despite all the highs and the lows, still consistently doing that, by the end of 2016, I was again financially independent, out of the rat race, despite being over $1 million in debt before. So I'm just here to tell you that it doesn't matter how amazing, how awesome you think you are in business or in life. If you don't have that going first thing where you get your mind in the right state to where you can solve problems more easily, you won't. I would have crumpled in a little corner and just peed all over myself. Like I would have just felt helpless. And that was something that gave me that extra little boost to make it through.
Yeah, and I love that. I always relate it to the foundation, right? We're both in the real estate. It's the foundation, and everything was crumbling around you, right? But
Yeah.
You had that foundation. And what I have found, and I see so many times, are people are trying to build these mansions of houses, these skyscrapers of business, and they don't have the foundation. So it's always in quicksand, right? So they're trying harder, this hack, this magic pill, whatever it is, but their foundation is not there. And I'll just touch on, to your point, right? COVID hit last year.
Yeah.
I had a gym business, right? That gym business stopped, but I kept getting up every single day at the same time and consistent with my habit of that morning routine to start me down that path. And I got questioned from a lot of people, why are you still getting up at that same time? And I'm like, are you kidding me? Now more than ever, I need that foundation. So I love that point, and congrats on staying consistent with that and having it pull you through. I love that. So congrats on that. So that leads into kind of the next question, right? Obviously you were changing roles, the business partners or people you're associated with said, let's go all in. You stop those multiple streams of income. Why do entrepreneurs need, it's essential to have multiple streams of income?
Well, I mean, like you said, like you had a gym business, right? You didn't ask to have it shut down. That wasn't your plan at all. That's what happened, you know? And I mean, granted, if you have cash reserves and things like that in place, you can kind of weather out some storms. But I think that's an exact example right there, is that you don't know. Like, it doesn't matter how amazing your business is. You can't guarantee that it's going to be around tomorrow. You know, you can't guarantee that you're going to be able to work in that business tomorrow, right? Like, if something happens to you, what if something does? What if you got to get out of that business? What will you do, right? And what's awesome is, like, I think business should be your number one investment. Like, what better place where you can actually infuse some of your time and energy to create, literally, in some cases, infinite rates of return, right? Because of how you're able to manipulate and do things. So I think that should be the number one place. The problem is, most entrepreneurs create a habit of always hustling, quote unquote, right? They're always hustling. They're always grinding. And it doesn't go for a few years. It goes on for decades. And the next thing you know, they're like saying, hey, I'm now 60 years old. What do I have to show for it? Yeah, I make good money for my business. On the outside, everybody thinks I'm doing great, but I know I'm not free, because if I stop working this business, even if I've got employees, if I stop working it, I'm not going to get really that consistent paycheck. Right. You need to have multiple streams of income outside of the business. Inside is great too. You want inside, but you need them outside as well, so that if anything does happen, or just for the fact if you want to step away tomorrow, you have that option. Because when you have more cash flow, it creates more options. And when you have more options, you have more freedom.
So if I was an entrepreneur starting out 1 or 2, 3 years into the business, I had good cash flow coming in, what would be some recommendations you would have related to creating multiple streams of income?
Yeah, I would start taking some of those percentages, put it away. It might just be a couple percent, right? A few percent of your profits that you're taking, or even of your revenue, just siphoning it off. Don't cannibalize your business, right? Like, don't pull out everything to where your business could fail because there's not enough cash reserves. But start just siphoning a little bit off. Like, create a habit of that. Start smaller, especially if it's in the first few years. You might be making decent money, but it's still in the infancy stage. You want to reinvest money in the business. Here's a key point. Mike Michalowicz, who talks about profit first, right? In that book, he talks about where most people just try to pay themselves whatever's left over as profit. The truth is, if you're always reinvesting in your business, you have zero profit, because reinvesting in your business is not profit. That's an expense, right? So you got to be able to pull off some profit does not go back in the business to be spent, right? It's got to come out, and you just start there. You start building up that account. And then as it builds up, you can start to say, all right, now I got a good cushion and good reserves. Now let's start putting money in. And by the way, talking about reserves, I know this is separate from multiple streams of income, but this is part of it. I'll tell you, the biggest lesson I learned, especially after a divorce from 5 years ago, or almost, I guess, 6 years ago now, the biggest lesson I learned is I was so inconsistent keeping reserves, because I'd just reinvest everything back in the business. What reinvest, so I wouldn't take money back. Well, it's great when you have good months, but what about when you have a crappy month? If you don't have that, then you're hustling, then you're stressing yourself out trying to figure out, ooh, I got to get some money coming in, right? It's always paycheck to paycheck. You're never free. What's interesting is when you start to build up some extra cash on the side, money that just sits there, money is just liquid. You can always tell yourself, I don't need that one customer, or I don't need that one client to make a difference in my life. I'm okay. I've got money. And when you come from a place of power where you say, I don't need this business, it's amazing how everybody wants to pay you. That's what I've noticed. Whenever you don't need the money, that's when everybody wants to give you money. It's when you need it, when you're desperate for it, when you have what I call business breath, where you reek of it, and people can smell it off you too. They know when you need money, and they automatically have distrust, right? They don't want to trust you. That's exactly why you need a cash reserve. That's why you need multiple streams of income after you build a little bit of reserve. So then you start having other streams saying, I don't need this crap. I don't need to take on this person because I need the money, or I don't need to sell this thing. I'm going to do what's right. I'm going to do what's smart for my business. And you'll watch your business grow so much faster and more profitable than ever.
And I that's a powerful statement right there, Chris, that you had alluded to, having the ability and having the power to not be so, pushy is not the right word, but
desperate.
Desperate. People feel it, right? When it's like, hey, I want you, no, hey, you can sign up or not. It doesn't make any difference. Then people are like, wait a second, okay, and then they are like, yes, I want to work with you. It's almost that pull back, so they lean forward in the process, and you're not going to be able to do that if, to your point, it's paycheck to paycheck. You're continuing to hustle and hustle and hustle. And it's just, I see that from a lot of folks, and it's incredibly powerful. So I loved how you frame that up from that perspective. So you had the crash in 2008, right? Struggled through that. Now you've gotten out financially free, right? Cut your hours by 1/3. We're able to grow the business by 10x. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. And not in that order necessarily, right? Yeah, it's true. So I had a really big awakening, right? I mean, obviously the recession was a big awakening for me, but I ended up, breaking off. I created Money Ripples in 2012, so I started making my comeback, slowly but surely, just steadily, paying back the debts and get myself in a healthy place. Well, 2015 rolls around. Like I mentioned, I went through a divorce, and I'll tell you, emotionally, that was harder than even being over $1 million in debt and then the whole $16,000 a month, right? Like the financial thing by all means, that was stressful, but where now your whole personal life has been shaken up, man, it was hard. It was hard to even function. And that's what happened to me. I was working maybe 50, 60 hours a week prior to that divorce. But then after that, even though I had time, I didn't even have my kids around. I was always taking care of kids and doing stuff because I worked from home for all these years. Then I was like, oh, what am I going to do? And I was so emotionally stressed from just the changes and becoming a single dad that I could only work 5 or 10 hours a week. The epiphany was I realized that I still had a business. It didn't, fall apart. It was still there. Now, I wasn't making as much money as I was working 50 or 60 hours a week, right? But I realized, wait a minute, I still have a business. In my mind, I thought I would have to quote unquote hustle, right? Like Gary Vee and, Grant Cardone, all those guys are telling you to do. It's bull crap. There's a truth to it, especially when you're talking to like the younger generation who thinks you can just walk up and make $1 million in one day. Like there's gotta be the balance. But most people I know don't think that's a reality. They know that it's going to be grinding it out, but they think you have to grind it out forever. And so I stopped grinding. Instead, I said, all right. And I took some advice from the book, The Pumpkin Plan, which is also a Mike Michalowicz's book. And in that book, they talk about how the prize winning pumpkins, the ones that are on the news, they're like thousands of pounds or whatever, right? They would buy these seeds from a place in Nova Scotia. It had to be from the specific farm, the specific breed of pumpkin. They buy it for up to $100,000 per seed, right? Wow. And then they would plant it. And then as it grew, there'd be multiple pumpkins on the vine. The smallest pumpkins, they chop off, right? They leave the biggest ones on until eventually there's just one pumpkin being fed by that entire vine. And that's the secret. In business and in life in general, right? It's about finding that biggest pumpkin. What's going to make the biggest difference for you? And so I started looking at my business. I said, I started applying the Pareto's principle, the 80-20 rule. And I said, all right, what's the top 20% that produces in my business, that produces 80% of my business? And then I took it a step further. I'm like, what's the top 20% of the top 20%? So in essence, what's the top 4% that creates 96% of my business? So I started changing like the people I was talking to. I started changing the activity I was doing. I cut out all the networking events I was going to. That was like 5-10 hours a week alone just by attending all these different local networking events. And I focused just on my podcast, on my show. And I was like, I'm going to do that. And when I started to change that, get rid of all the live speaking and the networking and stuff, it cut down my hours drastically, which also cut down my expenses because I wasn't traveling so much or doing this or that. I was focused on my activities and my expenses dropped, but my revenue doubled that same year. So I ended up like 5Xing just in the first year alone by essentially doing less, right? And then I just kept that going where over the next several years, then of course, almost year after year, the business would keep doubling. Now, granted, I'm not 5 or 10 hours a week anymore. I'm more like 20 hours a week, give or take, right? On average, right? Yep. By the way, when I hit 25 hours, I get exhausted. I found out if I only work 5 hours, my passion fizzles out. If I work 40 hours, I burn out. So to get that right amount of fire for me is about 20 hours a week. And I'll tell you, like I've never had life so good, than doing that. And even within my business, regardless of the other investments I have, just in my business alone, I'm way more profitable, way happier because I'm focusing on the things that I love doing that gets me the best results, best time return on my time and energy. And it's amazing. That's the kind of stuff that you should be looking for in your own life too.
Yeah, I love that. One, that you chose to slim down what you were focused on, right? And so many times we are busy but not productive, right?
Yes.
Or there's things that we're doing that aren't necessarily moving the needle in our business, but yet we've heard it from some guru, we've heard it from some expert, and we're doing it, but it's not moving the needle. As well as, right, it's Parkinson's Law of Time. We're all so much more productive when we have a vacation coming up, right? Those last 3 days, imagine taking that and, to your point, condensing it into 5-hour work days and saying, I'm doing whatever. You will still get the same amount done, but you will do it in less time because you're going to be so much more focused. And it's so amazing from a productivity perspective. And so many people get into that, that hustle, that grind, and I'm just going to put in countless hours. Yes, you need to do that initially, but I love your point, backing off, focusing on what really is that huge pumpkin and going after it. So that's fantastic. Chris, so where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me on my website, moneyripples.com. That's RIPPLES.com, plural, right? Or you can go to my podcast, The Chris Miles Money Show. You can find on iTunes, YouTube, or whatever, So yeah, check those two out.
Awesome, Chris. I appreciate you being on the show.
Hey, it's been a pleasure, Jeff. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. Thank you for watching. Have an amazing rest of your day. Rise, fight, love, repeat. Get after it, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Morning Fire for Entrepreneurs podcast. You now have the knowledge, but without action, knowledge is useless. Choose to act. Choose to step into your greatness and unlock that hero inside of you. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and leave a review so more entrepreneurs can hear this message. If you absolutely love this podcast, which I hope you do, then share it up with someone you know who might see benefit from it. Become that beacon of change, and together we can impact the world.